Do you want to be a psionic asset? Well, we've got some merch to help you with that issue. We've got a t-shirt and a mug that we're now offering. Link in the description. One of the most well-known Canadian UFO researchers, Grant Cameron, recently did an interview, and we're going to cover some of those highlights because Grant went off and he said a bunch of things that I think we should cover, such as psionics and piloting craft, okay? Piloting UFOs, right? Let's be real here. I've also got a story of a potentially extraterrestrial turtle. Stay with me. Spaceships the size of solar systems, right? Spaceships that can change shape and grow in size on a whim. They can manifest things. There's a lot to get into in this. And even a story from Grant about a gentleman from the CIA who was able to channel an alien. And what that alien had to say is quite interesting and a little funny, if I'm being honest. Now, even a story from Grant also allegedly channeling an alien being, and what that alien told him was also shocking and, I have to admit, a little funny. So let's jump in. Now, this first story is about Grant Cameron explaining a story from Chris Bledsoe, apparently teaching a one-star general how to pilot a UFO with his mind.
And you know that Chris Bledsoe had all these people around him, and that's the whole point, is that if you want to make contact with the intelligence, you got to go, forget about looking at lights in the sky and counting green ones and red ones and all that kind of stuff. You go to the people who are actually having the experiences, and that's what they did to Chris Bledsoe. And that's when he was giving them information. So I said to him at one point, I said, "Hey, Chris, did they actually, all these guys were at your place, all these military people and intelligence, did they ever ask you how to fly a craft?" He said, "Oh yeah, they brought me into a one-star general, and he wanted to know how to do it. And I described to a one-star general in the Air Force how to fly a craft."
Now, let's get to the part where Grant Cameron speaks about this gentleman who gets, possessed, I guess. He can channel this alien. And again, what this alien had to say was frightening, but also a little funny.
And there's the famous story of 1959, which is in a documentary called UFOs Past, Present, and Future, where it was actually given by Art Lundahl, who worked at the CIA at the time. And this had to do with a Navy intelligence guy who was dealing with a woman in Elliott, Maine, who was channeling an alien. So they were talking to her, and then she said, "Why don't I just teach you how to do it?" And so the guy sat down, and she put her hand on his right shoulder, and suddenly he started to do automatic writing, and he's talking to this alien. So he goes back to the CIA in Washington, D.C., and he's a Navy intelligence guy, but he also works for the CIA, and he goes into the National Photographic Interpretation Center in Washington, D.C., which is where all the U-2 SR-71 and spy photographs are analyzed. And Art Lundahl, the guy in the CIA that was the expert on UFOs, ran that facility. And so he said, "Oh, you're talking to the alien? Okay, sit down, let's talk to the alien." And this is all on this documentary, and it was Robert Friend from Blue Book who actually did the description on the film, because Art Lundahl said, "I'm on duty, I can't do it." So they got Robert Friend to tell the story. So they got the guy, and he starts this automatic writing, and Art Lundahl, the CIA, is asking these questions. Do you favor our religion? This and all these questions, and the guy's answering, and then he said, "We'd like some proof." And then the guy goes from automatic writing to talking. What do you want? We want you to show yourself. When? Now. Go to the window. And all these people, these CIA people, go to the window, and this UFO flies over top of the Capitol. And when Robert Friend was called into that to investigate this, the guy went in a trance a second time. They got this alpha alien, and he said, "No, the time isn't right." He went back to a general at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he said, "This is amazing. This guy's Adam's apple is moving down. Something's going on. We should investigate this." And he said, "Another agency has it. Hands off." And so 1959, they were trying to make contact with aliens.
I have to admit, that's quite a humorous story, but I am a little confused. Grant talks so fast, and I've interviewed him before on Vetted. He talks so fast, it's kind of hard to keep up, but I think he's saying this CIA guy, right, starts channeling this alien and basically makes a UFO appear to convince everybody, right? But I just found it funny how, the alien's like, "What do you want?" I just found that to be funny. Go to the window, right? It's just like telling them this. So look, there's even more stories here from Grant. And this next one involves a seance, and maybe an extraterrestrial turtle?
There's just been one confirmation after another in terms of people like the barber. Barber talks about the fact of flying the craft. Those whistleblowers, they're talking about flying the craft. And you see it over and over again, which basically means we're onto something. And that's the roadblock they've got. You can, almost like Jim Semivan said, people say, well, they've got bodies and crafts. Yes, they may have bodies and crafts, he says, but that doesn't mean you know what you're dealing with. And that's this whole idea that you can have the craft and you can't get the thing off the ground. You can have the bodies, but you don't know where they're from. Almost like a seance where a turtle appears, falls out of the ceiling, like Stanford, his brother, Thomas Stanford in Australia, that happened. A turtle falls onto the medium table. So what do you get there? Is that an extraterrestrial turtle? No, it's coming out of another field. If these beings understand how time and space works and how matter is put together, they know how it works, and they can make anything appear, anything manifest. And you see that over and over again.
Okay, so it's not an extraterrestrial turtle, but the joke he made there was kind of funny, right? Grant has a great sense of humor. So a turtle falls during a seance, and he's relating it to basically they can manifest things out of nowhere. I mean, I have to admit, if I was at a seance and a turtle just fell out, you know what I mean? I don't know, especially if it was a ninja turtle, if I'm being honest. But regardless, so no, Grant tells a story about himself talking to an alien, and I found this to be rather interesting and also, just a little humorous, just based off the answers that this alien is giving.
One of the questions I always ask the experiencers is, hey, do you ever ask him if he was an extraterrestrial? I've never had anybody question to say that they were an extraterrestrial. I had the one in Great Britain where there's a channel, aliens wanted to talk to me. So the first question I said, hey, are you an extraterrestrial? And then the word comes back, would you like us to be an extraterrestrial? We could do that if you want. We could even take you to our planet. But no, we're not extraterrestrials. We've always been here. You're the visitor. And that's this idea that it's all here and now. It's all alive at the same time. And that's where I think you and I are on the leading edge of understanding the world is not the way we think it works. And that's why they're doing these weird paranormal things, is they're just trying to get across to you, no, the world is not physical the way you think it is. Because what they're trying to do is create awe and curiosity. And until there's awe and curiosity, there's no investigation.
I agree with that last part for sure. But it was hilarious, the answer that this alien gave, right? Like, we're the visitors, first of all, right? They've been here the whole time. We're the ones that are new here, right? Which is interesting. We're the aliens, right? Which is kind of a theme that's been coming up recently, but I just found that to be rather humorous. I wonder, how do you trust what these beings are saying, right? I brought that up many times on the channel, but how do you trust the knowledge they're giving you? Make sense? What if they're just messing with you, right? I mean, it's like we just believe it because they said it, right? Or you get this voice, well, that must be it. That's the truth, right? What due diligence are we doing to make sure that, right, two parts. One, are you actually getting that message? And two, let's say you are getting that message and that's real. How do you know to believe it?
When I said, you've flown the craft, come on. And then she said, yeah, I've flown 3 different models. And she would talk about these 3 different models of the craft she'd flown and where she'd flown. But it was so unbelievable at the time, like especially the thing about they've got ones as big as the solar system. So it's almost conceivable that they could have something as big as the solar system. People say, well, you'd be able to see that, but you got to remember that they can make it appear as big as they want. So it could actually be a rock sitting on the side of the road. And if you break the rock open, there's a civilization in there the size of a solar system. And that's this whole weird thing about time and space.
Now, I have to admit that is an interesting concept, right? The idea that there would be this spaceship the size of a solar system, but they could confine it to the size of a rock, right? It's almost like that TARDIS, right, from Doctor Who, and this has been brought up before, right? They've talked about craft that we have recovered ourselves, right? That from the outside, it's one size, but when you step inside the craft, it's the size of a football field, right? Like, smaller, just, big bus size, but when you get inside, it's just massive, right? Which is interesting, right? That idea, is that possible? I don't know. But if you're that advanced and you have that kind of technology and you can distort time and space, I guess anything is possible.
Even like Susie Hansen, the top person in New Zealand, has written 2 books on the experiences with the Greys and what they taught her. And she talked about the thing where they said to her, they said, okay, watch this. We're going to make the craft bigger. And she said they went and the walls started to move. The white walls started to move, and they moved and they moved and moved. And she said, and it got so big, she couldn't see the walls anymore. It was that far away. And there's a guy who's an experiencer, runs MUFON Japan, who learned to do out-of-body experience. And he learned it through the Monroe Institute. And he could do it at will. And so he would go and he'd say, what do I want to do? I want to go to the gray ship. So he'd be on the gray ship, and he would tell me these stories. He'd be on the gray ship, and the gray would just go to the wall, put his hand by the wall, and a book would come out of the wall. And these bizarre things, almost like they can manifest whatever they just understand more about how the whole thing works. We have this ego that gets us in this world that we think we know what's going on.
And the fact that potentially these beings can manifest anything they want inside of the craft, right? But they could control the size inside just willy-nilly, right? Just you're standing there and just make it bigger. Now, I guess the question I would have, is it bigger on the outside too? Or are you just making it bigger on the inside? Which is kind of an interesting concept that you could control, right, the space around you like that just based on what you need, right? So what a interesting house that would be. Imagine if you had a house like that, right? You got a house and, it's set, but then let's say you're going to have a party, you're going to have a bunch of people over. You expand out the house as big as you need it for the party and then back to normal, for just regular living, right? Like, God, that's so fascinating to think that something like that could be possible, right? So, yeah, that is fascinating. Now, this last part from Grant is honestly equally as humorous, and Grant also sees the humor in it.
And as they told me numerous times when I was doing the psychedelic thing, you think you know what's going on. You haven't got a clue in this big ego thing. And I remember the one time I got really upset. They kept going about your ego is so big and you think you know everything and stuff. And so I said, well, I didn't come here. I just came here to learn. I didn't come here to do it. And so you tell me what the heck's going on. And this voice says, we don't know either. And I go, oh, come on. You don't know. It's like,
just the thought of the alien saying, we don't know either. We haven't got it figured out either. We don't know. We don't know what anything is, right? But at the same time, berating him for not knowing anything. And then he asking like, well, we don't know either. I don't know. Either the aliens are just hilarious, or fundamentally, Grant Cameron is misunderstanding it. Something else is going on. I don't know, right? You decide for yourself. Again, I'll put a link in the description to the full interview. Go check it out for yourself. And remember, Vetters, we'll see you on the next one. Every day's a gift, y'all. Peace!